With the Detroit Pistons falling to number 5 in the NBA draft, there's so many prospects that they'll be able to choose from. And today we'll talk about Bennedict Mathurin. We'll have Bryce Simon from the Pistons Pulse to talk about why he could be the pick. Stay tuned in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, or if you're one of the 50% of people who are watching this on YouTube and haven't hit that subscribe button, what are you waiting for? Go over to the YouTube channel, Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. We're on our road to 3,000 subscribers. I'd really appreciate it. Again, it's the best way to support the podcast. But let's go ahead and get this going. So, obviously, the Pistons have fallen to number 5 in the draft ladder. You guys got the live reaction. You guys have heard me, how sad I was, how disappointed I was. But now it's time to move past the disappointment, time to move past the sadness, and start talking about who could actually be drafted at the number 5 spot. And there's been a lot of talk. You got Keegan Murray, Jaden Ivey, Shaden Sharp, AJ Griffin. But today we're going to talk about Bennedict Mathurin. And we'll be sure to talk about all those other guys at some point in the future too before the draft. But today we're going to be talking about Bennedict Mathurin. And from what I understand, we're going to have one of his biggest fans on the podcast today to break down some of his games, his weaknesses, his strengths. We're going to have Bryce Simon. You guys all know Bryce. I just clicked the wrong one. What just happened? Oh, there you go. All right. We got Bryce back on. Bryce, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I was thinking about this. I really, really cherish the opportunities to come on with you now. I don't get to do it as much as I used to for, a variety of reasons. So every time you ask me to come on, I get super excited and I cherish every second of it. So I'm excited to do this episode as always and to talk about one of my favorite guys, Bennedict Mathurin.
We all know, I think all of you guys know Bryce. There was a point where Bryce was coming on damn near twice a week back before he ended up getting big and blowing up and getting his own podcast over at Pistons Pulse with the Detroit Free Press beat writer Omari Sankofa. That's been going great over there. They're doing great things. Make sure you guys are going and checking him out. And Omari, obviously, over at the Pistons Pulse podcast. Bryce, before we even talk about Bennedict Mathurin, just what was your reaction, man? Everyone knows what my reaction's been. I ruffled a few feathers. I pissed some people off with how straight up I was about how mad I was. Just how are you feeling when you saw them drop to 5?
I will say this, Koo. I was like, I just gonna keep my distance from Koo tonight. He's on one. He's worked up, and I'm just gonna leave it alone for tonight. I'll text him tomorrow morning, and we'll discuss it. Listen, I was disappointed. I was disappointed. I had sold myself on Chet, Jabari, Paolo. Those are arguments or debates or whatever. I'd done a lot of work on those guys for Detroit Bad Boys. I took a deep dive on 2 of the 3. I still do. I truly believe this, Coop. I truly believe the Pistons can get an impact player at 5. We're going to talk about one of them on this episode. I'm sure you're going to talk about the rest. I know you're planning on doing a Shaden Sharp one. He's another guy that's kind of a wild card. Keegan Murray, not as exciting, but I do think there's a guy there. This is why Troy Weaver makes his money, right? This is going to be a draft where there's a guy there. He just has to find the right one.
Fair enough. So, is Bennedict Mathurin the right one? Well, let's go ahead and get right into him now. So, Bennedict Mathurin, and we're going to let Bryce has done multiple deep dives on a lot of guys. Bennedict Mathurin is one of them. I'm going to respect how much work and time Bryce has put in. That's why we're having him on the show. I'm going to really let Bryce, I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions. I'm going to let him drive it from there. So, Bennedict Mathurin, I'll give you guys a little bit of basic stuff about him. He was a sophomore this past season, a wing from Arizona. He's 6'4.5" without shoes, but today Bryce told me before we started that we got the measurements with shoes and all that stuff at the combine. He is 6'6" with shoes, which I think that's all that matters. 205, average 17.3 points a game, 37% from damn near 38% from deep on pretty good volume, 75% from the free throw line, 5.7 rebounds, and the ringer compares him to Jamal Crawford, Karis LeVert, and shades of prime Victor Oladipo. So we're going to start off with this, Bryce. We're going to go his strengths, and then we'll go to his weaknesses, and then we'll talk about why he should be the pick over other guys. So let's go ahead and dive straight into his strengths. What is his main thing that draws you to Bennedict Mathurin? What's the thing that you come away thinking instantly, I really like this kid?
Okay, so I have 3, but I'm going to answer it with just one. And it's not the one that jumps off the screen immediately that I kind of it's his competitiveness and intensity. That's what I walked away from my film breakdown. And whenever I do my film breakdown, I pick 5 games throughout a season, 1 earlier in the year, 3 kind of in the middle, 1 at the end. And that way I can see improvement throughout the season. And I watch full games every second, all of that stuff. He is competitive. He is intense. He plays with an attitude and an energy. The only player I've evaluated, and you said, I've done quite a few now, especially guys at the top, that I would say had more, especially on the defensive end, was probably Jabari Smith Jr. That dude plays with a lot of intensity on the defensive end, and I know that's a sore subject right now. But that thing, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but I know he can also really shoot it, Q. But that was actually who we were supposed to talk about for this too.
Yes, yeah, right. Okay, yes. So that's Bryce said. Let me just pause it right there. Me and Bryce had scheduled for this episode last week, and we were supposed to be talking about Jabari Smith, but then the lottery screwed us, so we had to take a detour for a second. But go ahead, finish up.
I know. So no, it's the competitiveness and the intensity. He improved a lot. That's another thing. Koo, I really was impressed by. I know he was a sophomore, but he still was showing improvement from the beginning of the year to the end. And we'll talk about what areas, in particular. And then he's a smooth, fluid athlete. He really is, man. Like, he just glides on the floor. And I have a tendency to kind of fall in love with guys that are that fluid and that smooth, but it really shows. And he gets stuff done with it as well.
All right, so let's follow up with that. So do you view him, let's ask some basic questions here. At the next level, do you see him as a 2 or a 3?
I think he's a 2. I think he's tough enough and physical enough. He could play at the 3 at 6'6", maybe. What did we look? His standing reach was 8'8", something like that. I need to pull that back up. I think I said 8'8". So, a good wingspan there, especially when you kind of look at some of the other guys. I think he could hold up at the 3. But to me, he kind of is your prototypical 2.
All right, so his freshman year of college, he shot 41% from deep, but he was mostly just taking a lot of catch and shoot threes. This past season, he was asked to do a lot more with the ball in his hands. He shot 34.7% from deep off the bounce. Do you think that's something that can translate to the next level of something that he'll be able to not only shoot threes off the bounce from beyond the arc, but potentially in between game? Is that something you believe that's something he's going to be able to bring in the NBA?
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm saying whenever I kind of fall in love with the athlete that he is and the smoothness that he plays with. That stuff looks really good. Like, I think he's an on-the-move shooter, like coming off a staggered screen, and then he elevates so high on his shot. One thing I've put in my notes is I wish he created more separation on his sidestep moves off the dribble and his step backs, but he jumps so high on his shot, and he shoots so well with the contest. He shot, I think it was 35% on contested 3-pointers this past season, that it doesn't end up mattering. And so I think that's why I think that there's practical athleticism with it, because he uses that athleticism to get shots off.
All right, so what were some other positives that you think Pistons fans would love to hear about him?
Yeah, so 3 things offensively that I think people would like that he can also bring. And I'm going to save the ball screen stuff for maybe areas to improve in segment 2, even though I think it's there. But he's a really good offensive rebounder. I think he can be a really good offensive rebounder. 1.5 a game as a guard. And that athleticism, all that stuff comes into play. He had a huge one against TCU. If you want to go find the clip at the end of that game in the NCAA tournament, where he just out-toughed the other team in cuts, off-ball cuts, 1.4 points per possession. He knows when to cut. He's a twitchy athlete. And because he's a shooter, you have to overplay him. And then in transition, he was extremely efficient as well. So he's a guy that can, provide a lot of different things, which I think helps raise his floor. You know what I'm saying? We'll talk about where the ceiling is and what has to improve to get there. But I think those things, raise his floor.
All right, fair enough. So the Ringer has him, and we'll move on to some of his weaknesses at the end, moving on after this. But right now, the Ringer has him at number 10 in their mock draft. I know the Pistons have number 5. Where do you have him currently, without spoiling whether you think the Pistons should choose him over some of these other guys? Do you think 10 is the right area for him, or are you actually feeling a little bit higher on him?
I'm a little bit higher. I'll say, without spoiling it too much, I don't have him at number 5, but I do have him higher at 10. I 6, 7, 8. I have him more. But if I had tiers, 6 through 10, I think, or no, 6 through 8 is all the same tier for me, and that's the tier he's in.
All right, fair enough. And the last thing is, where do you view him as the next level? Do you see him as someone who is just a dynamic scorer with the ball in his hands? Like, what if the Pistons were to draft him? What do you see him doing for the team?
I think he's like a true 3-and-D, and I know people with more upside. Let me walk that back just a second, because I don't want to pigeonhole him into that. And that gives me the chance to talk about his defense. We'll say off ball because that'll be the next segment. I'm fully bought in on ball. This is what got me excited about him. I talked about the competitiveness and the intensity. I watched him disrupt entire possessions in the Tennessee game that I watched. Just on ball intensity. He's willing to get up and guard people. And we've seen that's something the Pistons do defensively. Like I think about him and Killian Hayes, and I don't think other teams' perimeter players would love seeing those two guys get up and guard him. And so he can fight through screens. So I know we want to talk about this at some point. If the Pistons decide they don't want to switch every single screen, he's a guy that will fight through screens on and off ball. He'll make multiple efforts. I think he can be disruptive. I'm fully bought into what this kid can do on the ball defensively.
All right, fair enough. Do you see him stepping in and being a starter if the Pistons were to draft him?
Yeah, I think he can fill a role where he comes in and he starts right away. And I won't get into the fit because I know we're trying to save it. But I think he can start right away. That's the floor of what he can come in and do right away. And then, talking about areas he can improve in just a second, that's where the upside, and then maybe you expand his role over years 2, 3, 4, 5 down the road.
Fair enough. All right, when we come back, we'll talk about some of his weaknesses and some things that he's going to have to work on to really excel at the next level. Stay tuned for that. But first, I had to tell you guys a little bit about your guys' favorite sponsor, Built Bar. I love brownies, but you know what I love more? Brownie batter. Sometimes I eat half the batter just while I'm making the brownies. Imagine if you could lick that brownie spatula clean and get some protein in. You're in luck because Built Bar now has a new creation, and this one is better than ever. The Brownie Batter Puff. You've heard me right. This Puff Bar takes protein bars to a whole new level, and they're available right now at Built.com. Have you guys ever tried the Puffs Built Bar yet? I'm not sure what you're waiting for. Puffs are a chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. That's right, delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. With only 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 7 grams of sugar, Brownie Batter Puffs are the perfect pick-me-up for any day. Again, all Built Puff bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. Brownie Batter Puffs will have you completely forgetting that you are eating a protein bar. No need to pinch yourself. This is real life. So go to Built.com to get the Brownie Batter Puffs now. Again, go to Built.com, but this time use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. And Built.com, they have more flavors than just a Brownie Batter Puff. They have peanut butter. You guys know that's my favorite. They got coconut, cherry barcia, strawberry, raspberry, all kinds of flavors. But I can't tell you for sure that Brownie Batter will be here tomorrow. It's a limited time flavor. So make sure, again, you go into Built.com to check out the Brownie Batter Puff now. That's Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast on the road to 3,000 subscribers, continuing to show Locked On. We're the best and fastest growing fan base at the Locked On Network. So again, Locked On Pistons YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. All right, Bryce. Some of his weaknesses. I can tell that you really like him. I really can't wait to get to the third segment to talk about how he would fit with the Pistons and all those kind of things and why he should be the pick over other guys. But of course, it's not all sunshine and rainbows with all these prospects. What are some negatives about this kid that he's going to have, that he struggles with right now and is going to have to improve on at the next level?
Yeah, so let's just stay with the defense since that's where we left off. His off-ball awareness has some work to be, some work to be done, especially with shooters. And I've been a little bit critical of this with Cade Cunningham, like getting a little ball watchy, getting too far away from shooters, leaving shooters open. And Bennedict Mathurin does that. He absolutely does that off the ball. He gets ball watchy. There was a couple clips in the NCAA tournament where he gets beat, like he just gets too far away from his man who's a shooter, and the kid knocks it down. So he is definitely going to have to improve off the ball. You see some good clips like where he tags the roll man and it looks good, and then there's some where he just completely blows it. So as a sophomore in college, it's not like he was a freshman. You would expect that stuff to have been a little bit better. I don't think it's like a care thing. It's just the awareness and the defensive IQ in terms of off the ball.
Fair enough. So I'm reading. So before we started this, I've read some of one of my go-to sites that I read up on to get like a very basic level. Obviously, it doesn't give you everything, but it gives you kind of like I believe the best basic level knowledge on a prospect is the Ringers mock draft. It's the big board by Kevin O'Connor, and one of the things that he talks about in here, he talks about him as a playmaker, and he said he's not a great playmaker, but he's a solid playmaker who can be enhanced by a better playmaker or a better player, such as Jamal Murray to Nikola Jokic. Do you think that this is something he's going to have to improve on at the next level? Is he able to be a main ball handler for a squad, whether that's the first squad or the second squad when Cade sits out, or is that something that he's going to have to get better at, learning how to run an offense and control tempo, et cetera, et cetera?
No, I don't think that's something he's going to do year one. I think he absolutely is better playing off ball, be a secondary creator. Now, he got so much better, and this is what I'm talking about, the improvement throughout the season. The first 2 games I watched of him, I barely saw him in ball screen stuff as the handler, and it didn't look very good when he was doing it. By the end, I'm like, wow, this has gotten a whole lot better, and not just scoring for himself, where he wasn't super efficient as this just in terms of his scoring, but the passing got so much better, and he started to showcase that a lot more. And in his interview today at the Combine, I believe James Edwards got the quote that he said he was very politically correct about how he said it. He didn't throw Arizona under the bus or his coach under the bus. He just said, within our system, I wasn't asked to do that very much, but I think it's something I can do more. I do think he has to improve upon it, but I think he has a lot of secondary abilities to do those things.
Right. So we talked about him. You said he's kind of like a 3-and-D guy that has a higher ceiling, that's capable of doing more. You talked about his outside shooting, him as a fluid athlete offensively. What's some areas offensively along with that you think he needs to improve on?
Yeah, I think the mid-range is a little bit of a struggle right now. I don't think he's super great in the mid-range. Again, like it's weird because every time he took a shot in the mid-range, I was like, oh, that looks good. And then he'd miss it. Like he has this little floater. It looks really pure. The elevation, again, in the mid-range is there. Like it all should be there, but the numbers weren't there, or at least the film wasn't there whenever I watched. And then I think just in general, the handle has to get better. He has to get tighter with the handle. That's, that kind of goes a little bit with the ball handling, ball screen stuff, but it definitely has to improve. And then I wouldn't mind the finishing package to get a little bit better, just a little more ability to finish around he's an explosive athlete. Like if you want to get excited, go watch the TCU game. He puts one down on a cut that is really, really impressive. But he didn't always go to that. So there's definitely improvements. I don't want to sugarcoat this like he's a, ready-made, prospect. Obviously he's not, or he wouldn't be, available at number 5, but I like the floor, and I think the ceiling's higher. I think where I disagree with people, Koo, is I think the ceiling is higher than a lot of other people do.
Fair enough. So obviously the Pistons fell to 5th, and it was very disappointing for me. And one of the things that I've talked about it a little bit on the podcast. Obviously, I talked about it a lot on the live stream we did right after the podcast, or after the lottery happened, and then I've talked about it a lot on Twitter. And I'll let you. I'm going to tie it back into Benedict Mathurin, but the thing that disappointed me the most was the fact that the Pistons lost and have, if you want to be just straight up bland, it sucked for 2 years now to get chances at top tier prospects, to get chances at blue chip prospects. They got one, obviously, the best one last year in Cade Cunningham. And this year, I feel like the Pistons really needed to get another blue chip type of prospect because in my opinion, I'm tired of seeing the Pistons just have nice players, but never having like the great players, and they get stuck in that area that they were stuck in with Andre Drummond and Reggie Jackson. And heck, even when Blake came over, Blake was a superstar, but he didn't have anything around them to do anything about it. So I want the Pistons to be able to have multiple prospects that could turn into something. Doesn't mean they have to, but they could have the chance to turn into something. So now my question to you with Benedict Mathurin is, and you're I should kind of tie this into Keegan Murray as well, because some of the negatives, and we'll eventually talk about Keegan Murray on the podcast, but some of the things I've read about Keegan Murray and some of the things I've heard about him. By the way, guys, we'll talk about him next week with Ant Wright. I'm sure a lot of you guys know who that is. But a lot of things I've heard about Keegan Murray is that, yeah, he's a nice player, but his ceiling is kind of capped. People don't know if he has a real ceiling, and that's frustrating for me. I'm not saying he won't be a good player in the NBA. He may very well be, but that kind of thing is frustrating to me because this is what the Pistons want: someone that has a difference maker type of ability, chance. Doesn't mean they have to do it, but they have a chance to reach it. Bennedict Mathurin, do you think he has a chance to reach that kind of level to where maybe he doesn't do it, but he has the ceiling to where you could see it? He has the ability to be one of those blue chip prospects, one of those top tier guys in your team that be a difference maker for a team.
I do. And I think that's where I'm different than other people. Everybody loves to throw out the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope comparison with Bennedict Mathurin. That's their favorite one. And I've even had people tell me like, hey, that's fine. Like if you get, KCP, he's a good player. He's a starting NBA guard. And I'm like, well, if I'm only getting KCP, then I would rather take my shot with Shaedon Sharpe or Jaden Ivey. And the reason I'm comfortable putting Bennedict Mathurin in the conversation with those guys is those guys' ceiling is still higher than Bennedict Mathurin's. I think it'd be crazy to suggest otherwise. I think I like the Victor Oladipo. Like, just as you say that, like, the more I think about it, I kind of like that prime Victor Oladipo before the injuries and everything else. I kind of like that one. And so, yeah, I think there's a multi-time all-star in Bennedict Mathurin. I think there's a guy that could average 20 points a game for multiple years in his career with Bennedict Mathurin. And that's not a ceiling I see with a guy like Keegan Murray.
All right, fair enough. There's multiple questions I want to ask you, but I think this kind of ties in to a fit, which we want to talk about in the last segment. So I'll give you last chance here. Is there anything else negative-wise, any other improvements that you feel like Pistons fans should know about this guy before they get too high or too low on him?
No, man, I feel like we covered it. I do want to, like, the mid-range left something to be desired, and the handle definitely has to get tighter. But I feel like we covered it. I feel like, I didn't sugarcoat it too much with the positives, I don't think. And I think I laid out the negatives or the things that he definitely has to improve on justly for him.
All right, fair enough. When we come back, we'll talk about his fit with the Detroit Pistons and why, if you are a supporter of Benedict Mathurin at 5, why should you take him over Shaedon Sharpe, potentially Jaden Ivey, Keegan Murray, AJ Griffin? Why Mathurin over these guys? We'll talk about that in the final segment of today's episode. But first, I have to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, BetOnline.net. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for our betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for our sports wagering information, from live betting, the playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about their trends and action today. And if you head over to the website right now, you'll see that they have, again, more than just basketball and baseball. They have boxing, golf, hockey, horse racing, martial arts, soccer, and tennis. And you head over to the NBA series. We're in the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals now. Listen, let me just tell you guys this. I understand I haven't been great with the money lines here, okay? I've been giving you guys suggestions for weeks now at BetOnline.net, but I haven't been that great with it. But I feel very confident about this one. The Warriors are now at -400 to win this series against the Dallas Mavericks. I'm taking that. I feel very confident about that. However, I can understand why some of you guys would feel a little bit risky and want to take the +320 on Luka, who has proven that he can come back from devastating losses like Game 1 and win a series, a la Phoenix Suns. So I would say take the -400 money line with the Warriors on the series, but do what you want to do. That's the kind of thing you can do, though, over at BetOnline.net. Again, head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. You guys get the deal on a road to 3,000 subscribers, all that good stuff. Two things real quick before we get started. One, I'm going to say happy birthday to my fiance, Megan. So let me tell you guys a little something real quick. So technically, by the time you guys listen to it, it'll be a day after her birthday. So we're out today. And she says to me, Ku, I listen to your podcast every single day. And when I woke up on my birthday to go to work, I really was expecting. Yeah, exactly.
Boo.
I was really expecting to see you say, "Oh, and today is my fiance's birthday, so we gotta say happy birthday to her." Blah blah. Everyone say happy birthday to her. But my excuse to her was, "Listen, it wasn't your birthday yet, so I wasn't thinking about saying happy birthday." So as I'm recording this right now, it's still her birthday. Everyone go in the comment section down below. Tell Megan happy birthday. Just joined the 24 club. She's feeling old. So it is what it is. That's the first thing.
You paid for a lot more expensive dinner tonight than what you had
Oh
planned
no!
after that mistake.
Oh no! Trust me. We let me just say
you're
this.
gonna be buying another puppy after that mistake.
we had a dinner today for her birthday, and I'll tell you this: it was definitely expensive. It was expensive. I'll tell you that much. But the second thing I wanted to say, Bryce, do you agree with me, man? Do you think the Warriors are going to beat the
Yes.
Mavericks? Just real quick.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got the Warriors winning it all. Like I've said this before. I feel like I'm not right about a whole lot of stuff, but I picked the Warriors as a dark horse NBA champion preseason. Like, hey, these guys are going to get healthy. They're going to be good, and so I'm just going to continue to roll with it. And we've talked about this. I love Steph Curry. I will say this. I really like Luka Doncic too. He was incredible in that Phoenix series. That was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I hope Golden State wins it. These playoffs have been amazing. I've been telling you guys on the podcast. Obviously, you want to do your stuff with the prospects and stay tuned with the Pistons off season. But these NBA playoffs, man, don't miss out on this. This has been some incredible play we're seeing. So
Boston is blowing Miami out.
Oh yeah, I know.
I was like, what is going on? And hey, listen, I don't mind it because my wife has a huge crush on Jimmy Butler. So anytime he loses and like whatever, then I'm all for it. But man, it's been crazy.
Hey man, the blowouts, a team will get blown out, they come out the next game and win it. It's crazy what's going on. But anyways, let's get back into Bennedict Mathurin. Okay, so Bryce, if the Pistons were to draft Bennedict Mathurin, what's his? Let's dive even further into what his fit is. What's he addressing on this team? What are some needs that the Pistons have that he's coming in and he's addressing? He's helping as soon as he gets to the team.
Okay, so in my opinion, I think I buy the 3-point shooting. It was actually better as a freshman than it was as a sophomore, but there's probably a little bit more with the contest, even though we did it well off the dribble, all that stuff. So I don't worry about the shot at all. It looks good. So I think shooting, which I think we all would agree is something the Pistons need, and on-ball perimeter defense, which I love. Like, I love the fact that Cade wouldn't have to guard the other team's best perimeter player on the defensive end. So I use InStatCoo. Like, I've got access to that. I've talked to you a little bit about it. You know, guarding pick and roll handler, 0.55 points per possession, less than a point per possession when he's guarding catch and drives, less than a point per possession in isolations. So like when he's guarding on the ball, according to those, and I know defensive metrics don't always tell the whole story, but it matches with the tape. I think he's really good on the defensive end. I know I've talked about it. So I think those are the two things: shooting, on ball defense.
Fair enough. Okay, so just to buffer your point about his shooting real quick, the Ringer has it right here. He shot 41.8% from three as a freshman, and then as a sophomore, he hit 38.3% of his catch and shoot triples. But he raised a lot of his volume with more, coming off screen, dribbles, all that. So it looks like that. At least the numbers say that the catch and shooting should definitely translate to the NBA level. This is a question I have for you, Bryce. Once the Pistons fell to 5, obviously we're gonna say it again. I was very furious. I was heartbroken. I was down, dude. I can't remember a time I've been that down the dumps in a minute, dude. It was.
It's
tough.
a good thing Megan's birthday wasn't on Tuesday, man. That would have been a roller. Dude. That would have been a roller coaster.
It would have been tough, dude. I don't know if I would have been able to fake it for her, but okay. So one of my things with falling to 5 now that I've come to grips on, and I want to have. At least for me, this is not what everyone's. It may not be what Troy Weaver's looking for, even though I think some part of him probably is. For me, I'm looking for a guy. Basically, I want to be able to draft somebody. I think I'll be able to run a trio of Cade, Killian, and whoever this pick is. I want to be able to run that trio because I really do believe in Killian still. I'm a big Killian guy. Everyone knows that. But I think Killian showed enough last year, especially towards the end, that he can. A lot of times, even when he came off the bench, Dwayne Casey still wanted to close with him because of how he can control an offense and get up into guys defensively, etc. So I think they want to, at least this is my opinion, I think they want to find a lineup that has him in there with him, Cade, and whoever this draft pick is, along with maybe Sadiq at the 4 and whoever at the 5, whether it's Isaiah Stewart or a pickup in free agency. My thing is, Can Bennedict Mathurin do that? See, I'm looking at some of these wings recently. We're going to talk about them on the podcast. Keegan Murray, AJ Griffin, some of these bigger guys that I feel like, okay, I think we could do that with those guys. Bennedict Mathurin, do you think they can do that 3 guards, or I guess 3 guard set with a Sadiq Bey and whoever at center, if they wanted to do so?
Oh, you're saying put them all on the floor together?
Correct.
Yeah. Yes, I think you can. I think you can. I guess I was thinking more you're going to go with, does that still leave minutes for Killian? I think Jaden Ivey is a tough fit for Killian Hayes. Like that would be interesting. Yeah, I think Bennedict Mathurin's tough enough, strong enough, intense enough that he can scale down or up, whichever way, to the 3 and play some minutes. So I think you could play some minutes there. I don't think you're going to play a lot of minutes there. He did average almost 4.5 defensive rebounds a game. So I think you look at that lineup and it's like, do you have the rebounding? Do you have the size? Well, Cade's a good rebounder. Killian can be a good rebounder. Sadiq can be a good rebounder. And Mathurin definitely has the athleticism to do it. So I think depending on what the other team had in terms of size, I think you could run that lineup out. But I guess what I was saying, I also love Bennedict Mathurin playing with Killian Hayes. If depending on how the minutes were staggered, just him and Killian in the backcourt, I think fits really well together also, because he's not going to demand the ball.
Fair enough. Let me ask you this too. I know everyone knows I'm big on Killian Hayes. Is that something? Do you feel like that's something that maybe the front office is looking at too? The ability to run 3 guys out there and close with one of them, or do you think that's more? And be straight up if you want to say it. I'm open to admitting that it might be some of my bias, but for me, that's something that I am looking forward to do. I want to be able to run lineups that are switchable with Killian, Cade, another switchable defender there with Sadiq, and another guy at the 5 who's able to either switch or hold his own. I was really interested by a lineup like that. So do you think that's something that they could be targeting or wanting to have versatility with, or do you think that's more my bias coming through there?
I think it's definitely something that they would want to do. It's something I would want to do. I don't know that it impacts where they draft or what they draft at this position. I don't know that any of the guys other than Jaden Ivey. I do think Jaden Ivey could be problematic for Killian Hayes. Other than that, I think everybody else fits in seamlessly. But I want to see another year from Killian. Hopefully he gets a whole offseason working on what he needs to, and he's going to get to play 82 games, healthy, knock on wood, all of that stuff. I think you got to give him another year to really see what's there. And you're right. Even when he came off the bench, he finished a lot of games. I love that role for Killian. Second unit point guard for most of the game. But yeah, if you can have a lineup, if this guy can fit in with him and Cade and 2 other guys to be a closing lineup, I like that a lot. That's going to be, if it's Bennedict Mathurin, I said it earlier, I love the idea of him and Killian Hayes guarding out on the perimeter. And I think that would be frustrating for other teams.
All right, so go ahead and give the argument now. You're a big Bennedict Mathurin guy. We got big Keegan Murray fans in the Pistons community. We got big Shaedon Sharpe guys, Jaden Ivey guys. I don't think I've seen actually that many AJ Griffin guys, even though I believe, I forget who it was that actually projected the Pistons to draft him right after the lottery ended.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah, I forget who it was, but those are the guys that are there at 5. Why Bennedict Mathurin over these guys? If you had to make an argument for him over Shaedon Sharpe, Keegan Murray, all these guys, what's your argument for him over them?
So as I've thought about this more and more, I could make an argument that Bennedict Mathurin is the safest pick at number 5 over Jaden Ivey and Shaedon Sharpe, and then also has more upside than Keegan Murray. And because of that, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a sure thing, which is something that I think a lot of people would agree that Jaden Ivey and Shaedon Sharpe aren't. The floors can be pretty low with those things. I shouldn't say sure thing. No, nothing's a sure thing. But, a more of a sure thing than those two. And then if you compare him to Keegan Murray, there's more of an upside than what Keegan Murray offers.
All right, so I'm gonna kind of, I'm gonna say this, and you tell me if this is basically what you're saying. I don't want to misquote you or go along with this. Are you saying that Bennedict Mathurin is the one prospect to you that is a safe pick that also gives you upside as well? Like there's some guys that give you that safe pick but don't give you upside. He's the one guy that can give you a safe pick while also maintaining that chance of an upside.
That's why I've fallen in love with him. I think at the very minimum, he shoots it well and he guards the crap out of the ball on ball at the very minimum. And I think that's very valuable. Maybe it's not number 5 value, but it's very valuable. And then I also think if the ball handling comes around, if the movement shooting, if the off the dribble shooting and the off ball defensive awareness comes, then you have a multi-time all-star on your hands.
All right, fair enough. So we're at 35 minutes. I kind of want to segue this into a different. I kind of wanted to ask you overall about this draft real quick, and then we'll wrap this up. So again, I'm not going to stop pointing it out. They fell to 5th. They had the 3rd highest odds. Do you still feel confident? Now, I listen. I've tried my hardest over the last 3 days. I believe it's been so far, or 2 days, to try to be positive and try to find a silver lining. Do you believe, removing all bias and trying to be as objective as possible, do you believe that there is still a possibility in this draft with one of these prospects that you can see them still being able to get a difference maker to the level of what they would have gone at the top 3 at 5 now? Do you think that's still a chance, or should you think, because this is my thing, I don't want the Pistons to draft someone and Pistons fans come out with way too high expectations of these guys because of what happened this past season, because they tanked this past season. That's the point of it.
Sure.
And now they're at 5. I don't want this guy to come in with too crazy expectations, and now no matter what he does, he'll never match those kind of expectations. Do you think that there's any chance they could get someone that could do that for them? And do you think Pistons fans, yes, you can get a good player, but you should probably try to keep it easy?
No, I truly believe it. I think they can really find an impact player at number 5. I think there's 4 guys that are on my radar that I would put in the pack. And that is the 4 guys we've mentioned over and over and over on this episode. And, Troy Weaver and his staff is way smarter than me. They do way more work than me. And so we just have to trust that they make the right decision. I love Bennedict Mathurin. Maybe it's Shaedon Sharpe. Maybe it's Jaden Ivey. Maybe it's Keegan Murray. And so I believe one of those 4 is going to be a very, very impactful player in the NBA. And, especially with Jaden Ivey and Shaedon Sharpe, the absolute ceilings, I'm not saying that the percentage is very high, but the absolute ceilings on those 2 could be as high as anybody in this draft class. Anybody, even the top 3. Those guys' absolute ceilings, and it may only be a 5% chance, but it's probably higher than or just as high as anybody else.
All right, let's have a little fun with this question I'm going to ask you. So at 5, you have 4 guys there. You have Shaedon Sharpe, you have Jaden Ivey, you have Bennedict Mathurin, and you have Keegan Murray. Which of those 4 guys scares you the most? In Bryce Simon's opinion,
Shaedon Sharpe.
He's the one that he scares you?
And here's why. I've watched hours of film on Jaden Ivey. I've watched hours of film on Bennedict Mathurin. I've watched hours of film on Keegan Murray and done breakdowns. And all I've watched of Shaedon Sharpe is YouTube clips and Twitter. And you can get stuff from that, but I just can't say anything with confidence on Shaedon Sharpe. I love the idea of Shaedon Sharpe. I just don't know if that's realistic or not of who he's going to be. It terrifies me. It would terrify me. But I would be excited about it, Koo. If they take him, I'm going to be excited about it. I'll try to build it up like he's going to be a star. The next one would be Jaden Ivey. And I'm higher on Jaden Ivey after my breakdown, and I actually think he can play with Cade Cunningham and fit nicely there. But there's a world where it doesn't go great for Jaden Ivey as well.
All right, fair enough. I keep saying last question, but this one, you keep giving me fun questions to ask you. So I'm gonna ask you
this is what we do. The listeners don't expect anything different.
Let me ask you one more fun question then. What's the one, if you had to pick one prospect that is that actually has a chance of being drafted 5, who do you, outside of Shaedon Sharpe, who's the one guy that you'd say, if you, in Bryce Simon's opinion, stay away from him? Don't do it. Just don't even take the chance with him. Stay away. Is it AJ Griffin? Because I see a lot of Pistons fans feel that way about him.
If we knew the medicals, so here's what I'll say. Not knowing the medicals, it's AJ Griffin. And it's because I just don't believe in the athleticism of AJ Griffin. He's a great shooter. He's not a very good on-ball defender. And I would take him at the end of the lottery before I would take him at number 5, unless you could tell me with certainty that the athleticism that people talk about him having is going to come back and was a result of the injuries, but it's going to be there in 12. Even if you tell me it's going to be there in 18 months, If you can tell me it's going to come back, then I would put him in this number 5 conversation. If you can't guarantee me that, I just don't have the same confidence in his upside and what he can become.
All right, fair enough. We'll wrap it up right there because I keep coming up with more fun questions, but we're already at 40 minutes, so I don't want to go too crazy.
Sorry, Locked On.
We're all good. We're all good. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's obviously always a lot of fun when we have Bryce on the show. I'm sure we'll have him on at least one more time before before the actual draft takes place. Here's your guys' argument for Bennedict Mathurin. This is your guys' deep dive into him. Let me know what you guys think about him in the comment section down below. If you guys feel like Bryce swayed you guys over to the Bennedict Mathurin side, let me know again in the comment section down below or over on Twitter. Make sure you guys go on and checking out Bryce on Twitter at Motor City Hoops. Make sure you're checking out his podcast at PistonsPulse. Bryce, thank you for coming on, man. You know, I appreciate you coming on all the time. Always have a lot of fun with you, man.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we have you on at some point before the draft. We're going to try to get you on before then. We'll try to make something work there. But again, thank you for coming on, man. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. Make sure you guys are making Locked On NBA your second listen of every day, from the first jump ball of the play-in tournament to the last possession of the finals. Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. Until the next one, next week, we got a jam-packed week. I'm going to have like 3 of these episodes recorded this weekend with guests. It's going to be jam-packed. We're talking draft all week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Stay tuned. But until then, I'll see you guys later. Make sure you guys are checking out Bryce over at Motor City Hoops and the Pistons Pulse. Until Monday, I'll see you guys later. Peace out, everybody.